Well, hi. My name is Darrin Crow, like the bird. Caw. And, well, we were trying to figure out some good stories to share with you all to kind of get your summer reading program started. Because, well, stories are pretty darn good, aren't they? And I like them any way they come. I like them in books. I like them in movies or TV or going to see a play or just sitting down and telling somebody a story.
And also in the movie theater.
That's right. I like going to the movie theater.
I like to go to the movie too.
Now, this summer, the theme for summer reading was dig into reading. So I was trying to come up with some stories about, well, things that are hidden or things that are lost that you have to dig up. So I made my list of stories here, and I thought I'd see what might be a good one to start out with. Oh, coyote. Now, have any of you ever seen a coyote before?
No.
Oh, good, you have.
Yes.
Excellent. There are coyotes around here. There are coyotes around Cedar Rapids and Iowa City. Now, this story is an old Native American story. It comes from out west, up in Oregon, near the Klamath River and the K-Rock Indians. Now, there are lots of stories about how we find things in the world, how different animals accomplish things. This story is about how the K-Rock Indians found fire. Oh, that's... Did you ever wonder how we got fire? Because the first people didn't have matches, and they didn't have lighters to start a fire. I wonder where we got fire from. I would love to hear one or two ideas on where we found fire. What do you think?
They used in the old days they used sticks to light them.
That's right, doing it like that. I wonder how they figured that out. What do you think?
A stick and a rock, glass them together for a long time, go make a spark, and keep on doing it, and then, boom, you have fire.
That's right. Well, here is a story. Oh, you have an idea? I'd love to hear it.
You would take together.
That's right. Well, here is a story about how the K-Rock Indians say that they discovered fire. Now, a long time ago, when the K-Rocks lived up in Oregon, there was lots of good food around. There were berries and nuts on the trees, and there were apples. There were good apples, too. And there was the deer and the bear. The bear was big and fierce, of course. Oh, but they were awful tasty if you managed to catch one. And their fur was nice and warm to wrap up in the cold. But the poor K-Rocks had to eat these things raw because they didn't have any fire. All of the fire in the world was owned by two old hags. Two cranky old ladies. The two cranky old ladies, they had a hut. They lived in a little house down by the mouth of the Klamath River. They had the fire and nobody else is getting our fire. They also, because they were down by the river, they had a special dam where all the salmon were kept. And nobody else got any salmon. Well, this particular winter had been really cold. And the poor Klamath Indians, they huddled under their blankets, but they didn't have any fire to keep them warm. And they set about saying, how are we going to get ourselves some fire? They sent people down to talk to the two hags. They sent one Indian who had lots of shells and beads and nice things. He said, ladies, I've got some lovely shells and beads. Could we buy some fire from you? No! Go away! They sent another fella who was good looking and strong, and he could talk. Woo! So he come down. How you doing? Hello, ladies. I was wondering, I've got a nice place up this way, and I'd like to cook some stuff. I need to borrow a little fire. No! Go away! They thought they'd talk to the animals and see if they could recruit some animals to help. They first went to the elk. But the elk, he had these huge antlers. And there was no way he could get through the door of the hag's house. They went to the bear. But the bear was kind of big and clumsy. He couldn't do it. They thought about the snake for about 2 seconds. But the snake had never done anything good for anybody. They weren't going to ask him. Finally, they settled on Coyote. Coyote. He was scrawny, and he was thin, and he was always hungry. He was always going. He was always on the lookout for maybe scraps of food that the hunters dropped, or small little animals, because coyotes are kind of like dogs. Now, when all of the animals were first created and they were turned loose on the world, why, all the hunters, they sprang out on their prey, and Coyote was supposed to get the bighorn sheep on the mountains, and he jumped out to get one, and the sheep went foop, and Coyote missed it. And for the rest of his life, poor Coyote has to really work hard to get any food. So the K-Rocks figured he'd like it if they asked him to help and promised him some food. So they came to Coyote and they said, Coyote, we need you to go to the home of the hags and get us some fire. If you do, we'll give you some good food. And they handed him some choice bear meat. They handed him some fresh frog legs. He liked frog legs a lot. I like frog legs too. Coyote felt really important. He kind of fluffed up a little bit and he said, oh, well, I suppose I could give it a try. Now, Coyote had been living out in the wilderness for quite a while. His coat was all scraggly. He was kind of dirty, kind of like you might look after you've been playing outside all day long and rolling around in the dirt and the grass. Well, he headed over to the old lady's house. He kind of shuffled along. He drooped his ears. He tucked his tail. He looked mighty pitiful. He come up to the door and went, scratch, scratch, scratch. Well, the old hag showed up in the dark. Who's there? No, Coyote. Come on in. You lay down over there by the fire. And that's what Coyote did. He comes right in. He laid down. He got right up by that fire. My goodness, that fire was warm. He hadn't been that warm in months. He lay there. He had brought some animals and one of the K-Rocks along with him. Way back at the edge of the village, he put a frog. Just before the frog, he put a squirrel. Just before the squirrel, he put a bat. Just before the bat, he put the bear. And just before the bear, he put a cougar. And he asked one of the men to come to the edge of the forest with him. And as Coyote was settling in by the fire, he pretended to fall asleep. He went, when the old lady thought he was good and asleep, he let out a woof, woof. The old lady thought he barked because he was nice and happy. But it was a signal for the K-Rock who was hiding in the trees. He picked up some rocks and went, whoop, whoop, yee-haw, whoop. And he started throwing rocks and sticks at the hut and making a lot of noise. The two old ladies, they said, ah, who's come to do mischief? And they threw open the door and they ran outside. As soon as their backs were turned, Coyote dived down. He grabbed up a stick from the fire, and he went running out the door as fast as he could go. When he whizzed past the old ladies with that branch in his mouth, the ladies went, ah, come back here with our fire, you! Ah! And they went running. Poor Coyote ran just as fast as he could go. I tell you what, those little old ladies moved fast for being 132 years old. Whew! They were catching up to him. And poor Coyote was just about out of breath. He could, oh, there's Cougar. He went, hi-ya! And he tossed the fire. just before the old ladies got him. Cougar leaned back and and he got that branch in his mouth, and Cougar went because he could run. He smoked those old ladies. They were so far behind him they could barely see him. He figured it was safe now. He took his branch and he went foop, and he tossed it off to Bear. Oh, they shouldn't have invited Bear to do this. Bear, he got the branch and went, oh, look, I got the fire. I dropped the fire. Oh, dear. Oh, I got the fire. I dropped the fire. Oh, dear. Oh, I got the fire. I dropped. Oh, I'm going the wrong way now. Oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear. Poor Bear was so clumsy. And he got so turned around, those old ladies caught up to him fast. And they were catching up behind him going, Poor Bear went, oh dear, oh, I dropped it. Oh. He went, ha! And he tossed the fire up in the air. Fortunately, the bat was right above him. And the bat caught the fire in his claws, and he took off going, and the old ladies were running underneath him going, get us back off fire! You! Hey, you! He led them up and down and all around, back and forth. Finally, his poor little wings were getting tired. But he saw a squirrel underneath him, and he dropped the torch. And Squirrel went, oh, I got it! Whew! I got it! And right behind him were the old ladies. They're going to get me! He was running so fast, the wind was building up the fire. And that brand burned brighter and brighter. And his poor tail was tucked up around. And he went, oh no! My tail's on fire! And if you look at a squirrel today, you'll see his tail is still all curled up around, and it's got the scorch marks on the back of it, even now. Well, he's running around, poor little squirrel, he is just about out of breath, and those old ladies are right behind him, and he sees the frog. When he gets to the frog, that stick is burned down to about this big. Poor old frog has a hard time getting into his little hands. He goes, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Oh, oh. He hopped. He came to the edge of the pond right by the village. He splashed into the pond and went swimming as fast as he could go. He hopped up, and all the K-Rocks said, where's the fire? Where's the fire? And the frog went, bleh. He spit out one tiny spark onto a pile of dry leaves and sticks. And the pile went, and there was fire. Frog turned around at that point and said, hey, what the? Where's my tail? Because Frog used to have a tail. But the stick was so hot that it burned his tail right off. And nowadays, if you go look at tadpoles in a pond, you'll see they've got tails. But when they become adults, out of respect for their great ancestor, they lose their tails. And that's why frogs don't have tails anymore. Well, when Coyote got back to the village, the K-Rocks were so thrilled with him. They gave him all the best meat. They gave him all the best food they could find. Coyote got pretty fat and happy. He was walking around the camp like this. But the K-Rocks, they wanted one more thing. They had fire now. They could roast bear meat and roast venison and roast turkey. But they couldn't have any grilled salmon because there was no salmon. The two old hags had them all. So they came back to Coyote and they said, Coyote, you did such a good job of getting the fire for us. Think you could get the key and open up the salmon? Coyote thought for a minute, and he thought, boy, they've been feeding me awful good. If I can get them the salmon, think of what they'll do for me then. He said, yes, I agree, but wait till my summer coat comes in. That way they won't recognize me. So they waited a few weeks while the weather warmed up. And Coyote's winter fur fell out, and his lighter-colored summer fur came in. And he went trotting down toward the old lady's hut. Oh, the first time he was there, he was muddy and dirty and skinny and all bedraggled. This time he was sleek and a little fat and pretty darn proud of himself. He came right up and went, scratch, scratch, scratch. The old lady showed him, who's there? Oh, look at that nice-looking coyote. Come on in. Coyote flopped down by the fire again. Well, sir, he slept all night long. In the morning, the old ladies, they got up and they took the key to the salmon dam. And they headed off down the path. Time to get some salmon for breakfast. As soon as they were out the door and heading down the path, Coyote got up. He stretched. And he took off at a run. He ran right between the legs of the old ladies and went, whoop! And they went, ah! Boom! And they fell flat on the ground, and the key went, fwah! And Coyote ran, ha, 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 ha! He got the key, he ran down to the dam, he put the key in the lock and opened it up. And the water came pouring out so fast, it didn't just break the gate, it broke down the whole dam. And the whole river was awash with big, shining silver salmon. And the K-Rocks now had all the salmon they could eat. Well, Coyote was so honored among them, he had everything he could want. But he still wasn't satisfied. He would look up at the stars at night, and he'd say to himself, boy, an animal like me shouldn't be stuck down here. I'm the great Coyote. I should be up dancing with those stars. He was the first Dancing with the Stars contestant, you see. He went up to the top of the cliff every night, and he found a bright blue star that he thought was awful pretty. And he'd sit there and go, "Hurr! Hurr! 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 Hurr!" Well, finally she got tired of him howling at her every night. And she reached down her hand, and Coyote came up. And they danced, they jumped and kicked and turned and twirled, and the higher they got up, the faster they danced. But the higher they got up, the colder it got. And poor Coyote, his paws got so cold they were numb. And before he knew what was happening, his hands had slipped. And he went, shh.
Did he die?
Nobody knows. He must have fallen into what's between the sky and the earth. Because didn't nobody ever see Coyote again after that? The moral of the story in the book was that coyotes ought not to dance with stars. But myself, I think it's a good story about how we dug in and found fire. So that's the story of Coyote and the fire. Whew. So, do any of you ever go fishing? Do you? Yeah. Oh, good. Do any of you like to eat fish?
Yeah.
Oh, somebody raise your hand and tell me what kind of fish you like to eat. What kind of fish do you like? Oh, shrimp. Go to Red Lobster, get that coconut shrimp with the, oh. What else, yes? Salmon is marvelous, isn't it? Yeah. Catfish is wonderful, deep fried. What about you?
What's that fish that goes in a sandwich?
Oh, fish sandwiches are great. Okay, so this story comes to us from the country of Borneo. Borneo is way over on the other side of the world. It's an island in the Pacific Ocean. I know. It's an island out in the ocean. And the people that live on Borneo, they eat lots and lots and lots of fish because they live on the ocean. Now, this story is about two brothers, Awang and Kararat. Now, they were two brothers. Does anybody here have a brother? Oh, yeah. Very good, very good. Now, like lots of stories, Awang was the older brother. And as the older brother, he was a real pain in the neck. He was kind of loud. He was kind of bossy. He just bossed his brother around all the time. Kararat, he was kind of quiet. He tried to get along with everybody. Now, one night, Awang and Kararat had been out in their boat fishing all night long. And they had caught a nice big pile of fish. Their big canoe was full of fish. They thought they'd roast some for breakfast. So they were over by the shore, and there was a lot of trees there. They broke off some wood. And Kararat, he was just taking his axe, and he was splitting up some of the wood so they could start a fire. And he lost his grip on the axe, and it went over the edge of the boat and went splash! Oh, no. Kararat didn't even think. He really liked that axe. It was a particularly good, sharp one. He didn't want to lose it. So, whoosh, right over the edge of the boat he went. And he swam down, down, down to the bottom of the lagoon. He went past the seaweed, down among the pink and white coral. When he got down there, he saw big shoals of silver fish swimming by. There were some red fish down here. There was a blue and yellow one that looked kind of like you. All of a sudden, he turned, and he saw a castle. It was all carved out of coral. It was pink and white with towers and gates. And right inside the main gate, there was a great, big, gold fish. The fish looked at him and said, now, you or I wouldn't be able to understand it, but because of magic, Kararat was able to understand the fish. What the fish said was, "What are you doing down here, person?" And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. You see, I have lost my axe, and I'm looking for it, and I was wondering if you knew where it was." Now, of course, by this point, you or I would have been out of breath. I'm not sure how he managed to keep going underwater, but he did. Why, the fish looked at him and said, "I know exactly where your axe is. Some of my fish picked it up, and it is here in the castle. Come inside." Kararat followed the fish through the gate of the castle. It was pretty incredible. There were great big windows where the green and blue light from the sun faded in. There were treasures everywhere. He was in the castle of the Rajah of the Fishes. They sat down. The Rajah said to him, "You have had a busy morning. Would you like some breakfast before you get your axe?" "Oh, yes, Your Highness, that would be very kind of you," because Kararat was really hungry. And he sat down. And right away, in came a whole group of very tiny silver fish. And each tiny silver fish carried a great big seashell on its back. And inside the seashells were the most incredible dishes. They were made of seaweed and little grasses that grew on the bottom of the sea floor. Hey, Kararat was amazed. He'd never tasted anything this good before in his life. And he loved to eat fish, let me tell you. They got up and they walked around. They came to one room, and there on the wall was a huge display of hundreds of fish hooks. Kararat looked at it. The Rajah of the Fishes said to him, "This is our collection. Some of our greatest fish have been caught by fishermen and managed to escape. These are the hooks that we've pulled out of their mouths." Kararat was smart enough not to say that he was a fisherman. He said, "Oh, that's a great shame. I'm sorry they were hurt." The king looked at him, said, "You're a good man. Before you go, come into this room." And his fish servants opened up the doors, and there was piled up tons and tons of treasure. There were gold coins. There were jewels. There were great big pearls and cups and crowns. He said, "Where'd you get all this?" The Rajah said, "Oh, over the years, ships have wrecked on the coral and sunk. My fishes find the treasure and they bring it here. We don't need it or want it, so sometimes we give it to good men like you." So Kararat loaded up a trunk. He thanked the Rajah of the Fishes, And he started to swim back up again. Now, up on the boat, his brother Owang had pretty much decided that maybe his brother was no longer coming back up. He was getting ready to head back in, when all of a sudden, up comes his head above the water. And Kararat says, Owang, help me get this in the ship. And he passes up the trunk, and they put it in the boat. And he opens the lid, and there is that treasure. Owang says, where did you get that? Well, his brother tells him all about the castle and the Rajah of the Fishes and the treasure. And his brother was so excited. He said, I want to get some for myself. And he dived right over the boat and headed down into the water. Kararat hadn't had time to tell him about the big wall with the fish hooks. Now, you remember Owang was the bossy one. He swam up to the castle, and the Rajah of the Fishes said, what can we do for you? He said, I dropped my axe. I'm looking for it. Well, come inside. We will help you find it. They swam straight inside. The king offered him some supper. And Owang ate it gratefully, and he ate. He said, oh, pretty good stuff. You know, it's not as good as what we have up on shore. There is nothing to compare with a nice big plate of baked fish. And everybody in the dining room went, Owang didn't notice at all. Several very large fish started to swim after them, though. They went off toward the treasure room. And Owang looked at the Rajah and said, you gave my brother some treasure. Have you got any for me? He said, yes, of course. On their way to the treasure room, they came past the room with the big collection of fish hooks. Owang looked at it and said, ha! That's a pretty good collection of fish hooks you got there. Mine's better, of course. There's not a better fisherman on the whole island than me. You should see the size of some of the fish I've caught. All of the fish following him backed up. The king didn't say anything, though. He was a nice man. Nice fish. They came to the treasure room, and he gave him his treasure. He loaded himself up, and he headed out. As he headed out the front door of the palace, he did not notice that several very large fish with very sharp teeth were swimming behind him. He got clear of the palace, and, well, Kararat waited in the boat for a very, very long time for his brother. But it turns out that the fish down there at the palace might have had a larger supper than they were intending to have that day. For no one saw him again, ever. And Kararat, being the good man that he was, from that day forward, never did fish again. He became a farmer, and he raised rice and vegetables and grew all kinds of great food, but he never needed to eat fish again. And that is the story of the Rajah of the Fishes, don't you know? Well, my friends, I brought a song with me today, and it has absolutely nothing to do with our theme, but I like it because it's a silly song. Do you mind if we go off topic for a minute? Yeah. Now, I was wondering, this one has lots of actions. Would any of you small people like to come and sit down here on the floor with me? Yeah, come and make a little circle right up here.
Can my sister sit next to me?
Absolutely. There we go. Now, actually, I can work this song into our theme because it is a song about a gold miner. And of course, gold miners, they dig in the ground to find gold, don't they? Oh, that's so cute. Come on in. This song is called The Gold Miner Who Went Yodeling. Do any of you yodel?
What is a yodel?
It's a kind of singing. It goes, yodel, 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 yodel. Yeah. Now, here's how the song goes. I'll sing the verse with you, and you big people can sing along too. It goes like this. Oh, a gold miner went yodeling on a mountain so high, when along came an avalanche, interrupting his cry.
I heard a song like that.
Yeah. Now, an avalanche, of course, is when all the snow falls on a mountain. So, let's try that verse one more time together, okay? Here we go. Oh, a gold miner went yodeling on a mountain top high when along came an avalanche, interrupting his cry. Now, here's where the actions come in. Hold up your hands like this. And the chorus goes, oh, leery. And then we're going to go slap, clap, snap. That's right. It goes, oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Think you can do that? Let's try it again. Let's go. Oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. And if you can't slap that, snap. That's okay. And then we go swish, because that's the avalanche coming through. And we're going to do that 3 times. So let's try the verse and the chorus together, okay? Here we go. Oh, a gold miner went yodeling on a mountain top high when along came an avalanche, interrupting his cry. Here we go. Oh, leery, oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish. Oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish. Oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish. Oh, leery, a. Now here's verse 2. Oh, a gold miner went yodeling on a mountain top high when along came a grizzly bear, interrupting his cry. So now we're going to add the grizzly bear in. Here we go. Oh, leery, oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish, grrr. Oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish, grrr. Oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish, grrr. Oh, leery, a. Oh, a gold miner went yodeling on a mountain top high when along came a St. Bernard. That's a kind of really big dog, interrupting his cry. Oh, leery, oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish, grrr. Because it got to be the dog. Oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish, grrr. Oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish, grrr. Here we go at the next verse. Oh, a gold miner went yodeling on a mountain top high when along came a Jersey cow. That's kind of milk cow, so we're going to have to milk the cow. Interrupting his cry. Oh, leery, oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish, grrr, squirt, squirt, oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish, grrr, squirt, squirt, oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish, grrr, squirt, squirt, oh, leery, a. Now I wonder, think for just a second. I want somebody to raise their hand and give me an idea for what might interrupt him next. What might interrupt him next? You, sir, in the seat back there? A yak? What kind of sound is a yak going to make? How about bah? No? No? Okay, here we go. Oh, a gold miner went yodeling on a mountain top high when along came a yak, interrupting his cry. Oh, leery, oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish, grrr, squirt, squirt, ah. Oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish, grrr, squirt, squirt, ah. Oh, leery, leery, oh, leery, a. Swish, grrr, squirt, squirt, ah. All right, let's see. Would somebody else raise their hand and make me a suggestion? How about you? A catfish that goes splash, splash? Okay, here we go. Oh, way gold coal miner went yodeling on a mountain top high when along came a catfish, interrupting his cry. Oh, Leary, oh, Leary, Leary, oh, Leary, eh. Swish, grr, ha, ha, squirt, squirt, ah, splash, splash. Oh, Leary, Leary, oh, Leary, eh. Swish, grr, ha, ha, squirt, squirt, ah, splash, splash. Oh, Leary, Leary, oh, Leary, eh. Swish, grr, ha, ha, squirt, squirt, ah, splash, splash. Oh, Leary, eh. Well, now, you guys know this song now, right? So, I don't have time for any more right now, but you guys now know this song, so you can sing it all the way home tonight and all day tomorrow, because you can make up verses as long as your parents can stand it, possibly even longer. Now, you guys are more than welcome to stay right here. I have another story for you. I learned this story when I was in 3rd grade, and I have always loved this story. It is a story about 2 little boys. We'll call them Andy and Luke, okay? Now, they moved to a new house. Have any of you ever moved to a new house before? Yeah, oh, good. We just moved ourselves recently. Now, Andy and Luke, they moved to a big old house. You know the kind of house they have in Scooby-Doo or a mystery show? It's a big house with lots of windows and peaks and spider webs. It was kind of creepy. Well, they went up and they were getting settled into their new bedroom. Now, as they got into their new bedroom, they were hanging up their clothes. They opened the closet, and the closet door went creak. And there was a note on the wall at the back of the closet. The note did not say sit on the chair. The note said, stop! Beware! Do not go through the secret passage behind the closet.
Why?
And whatever you do, do not touch the purple fuzzball.
Why?
But do you think Andy and Luke listened to that warning? They didn't know. No, sir, Andy and Luke were brave little boys who weren't afraid of anything. They pushed open the secret passage and went brrrr. And there was a stairway. They followed the stairway. It went down and down and down until they got to the bottom of the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs was a great, big, heavy wooden door. And on the door was a note. It said, "Oh no! Why didn't you listen? Why did you come here? Whatever you do, don't go through this door. And whatever you do, don't touch the purple fuzzball." But did Andy and Luke listen to the warning? No, they were brave. They weren't afraid of anything. They pushed that big door and it went, and there before them was a long tunnel. There was water dripping from the stone ceiling. The floor was all covered with slippery stuff, and they slipped and they slid their way along the floor until finally they came to a great big, heavy iron set of bars on a gate. And on the bars was a note. The note said, "Fools! What have you done? You must not come here. Go back. Don't go through this gate. And whatever you do, don't touch the purple fuzzball." Why? They don't know. Did Andy and Luke listen to the warning? No. They took that gate and they pulled, they went, and they came into a great big cave. They could barely see the top of the cave. There was a light shining through a hole at one end, and the ray of sunlight fell on a little pedestal. On the pedestal was a glass dome. Under the glass dome was a white pillow. On the pillow was a purple fuzzball. It was about this big. It had fit on your pinky nail. Andy walked up to it. He took off the glass dome. He picked up the fuzzball. He said, "That's it? This is the purple fuzzball? Man, that stinks." I threw it over his shoulder. All of a sudden, the ground began to shake. Andy and Luke turned around. The fuzzball was bouncing up and down on the floor. All of a sudden, the fuzzball went. It was no longer teeny tiny. It was about 3 inches around, and it started to roll toward them. Andy looked at Luke. Luke looked at Andy. They both looked at the fuzzball, which was about 6 inches big now, and rolling straight toward them. And they went, "Ah!" And they ran to the edge of the cave. They pushed those big iron gates shut. They went, "Ah!" Cha-ching. They went running as fast as they could go down the tunnel. They heard kabang, kabang. They could hear the fuzzball banging against the gate. Finally, they heard crunch. And they knew the fuzzball was coming down the tunnel toward them. They went running and slipping and sliding down that tunnel as fast as they could. They looked back. The fuzzball was about 2 feet tall now, and it was getting bigger with every second. They got to the end of the tunnel, and they got to the big wooden door, and they pulled the door shut. Kaboom! And they started running up the stairs. As they ran up the stairs, they heard boom, boom, crunch. And they heard the door break beneath them. They looked down the stairs and they could see the fuzzball filling up the stairway as it came. It was about 3 or 4 feet tall now and getting bigger with every second. They went running up the stairs. They burst out the secret passage into their bedroom. Right behind them, the fuzzball exploded the closet door because it was about 5 feet tall. They went running out their bedroom, down the steps, and out the front door of the house. Just as they got out the front door of the house, the fuzzball went boom and exploded out the front door 7 feet tall and rolling down the sidewalk toward them. They ran as fast as they could go, faster and faster down the sidewalk. Behind them, the fuzzball was about 8 feet tall now. It was 10 feet tall. It was 12. It got higher and higher. Finally, it reached out. It grabbed onto Andy and it said, "Tag, you're it." Oh, all right. I'll let you guys go back to your seats now. Thank you for sitting up here with me and helping me out with that song and with this story.
Are we done?
Not quite yet. I have one more to go. Whew. The Purple Fuzzball is one of those great elementary school stories that every young child should know and tell. There are many variations on it. I have heard the Pink Gorilla. But there's nothing like that "tag, you're it" ending to a story. Now, I have one last story of something that was almost lost, but through miraculous hard work was able to be found and preserved. Did you know? I was not there for this story. It happened at least 150 years ago, maybe longer. Way out on the East Coast on the Ohio River. The way I have heard the story told, when the first settlers came over the mountains, they found something amazing along the Ohio. They found a new kind of wild pig. These pigs had feathers. Yeah, I know. Not like the pigs we have now. These had beautiful feathers. Now, could they fly? No, they were like penguins or ostriches. And that's why if you talk to farmers in that area, if you told them something they didn't believe, they'd say, yeah, I believe that when pigs fly. That's why. Now, have you ever seen one of these pigs with feathers? Well, no, because they're extinct now. They're all gone. There aren't any left. This is the story of how they were lost. And it was the fault of a steamboat. Maybe you've seen steamboats. They're the big boats out on the Mississippi River with the big paddle wheels on the back of them. And they go up and down the rivers. Now, this story is about a steamboat called the Galusha. Now, the Galusha was the biggest, fastest, most powerful steamboat that was ever on a river. It was so big. The paddle wheel on the back was the size of 20 Ferris wheels put side by side. It was. The smokestacks were so tall that if you stood up on the top deck on a clear day, you could almost see the top of the stacks. They had to crank the stacks down like telescopes in order to fit underneath the bridges. The whistle, the Galusha's whistle was so loud, they only blew it in real emergencies because it would break out the windows in houses 3 miles away. That's how loud it was. Now, one day, the Galusha was at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The crew had just finished loading her up from stem to stern and top to bottom with crate upon crate upon crate of fresh donut holes that they were taking to Cincinnati. People in Cincinnati loved donuts. I assume you guys like donuts, don't you? Yeah. Oh, yes. People in Cincinnati were crazy for donuts, but they didn't have the hole-making technology yet. They couldn't put holes in, so they had to get the holes from Pittsburgh and then put the holes in the donuts when they got to Cincinnati. So the whole ship is loaded with donut holes. The captain gets word that there's been a heavy rainstorm upriver, and all the way down it's flooding. And if they don't get to Cincinnati in 2 hours, the river will be too deep and they won't fit under the bridges. Now it's 465 miles from Pittsburgh to Cincinnati by river. The fastest ships did it in 2 or 3 days. And the captain had 2 hours. But he wasn't afraid. He had the firemen load up all the wood they could get. And they built up a huge head of steam. And he took the big lever. And he put the wheel into reverse. And the big wheel went. And they backed out. And he moved that lever past forward to full steam ahead. And the wheel went. And they shot out of that harbor like lightning that was late for supper. They left so fast that they scalded the water in the harbor, and everybody in Pittsburgh had boiled fish for supper that night. And they were just shooting down the river. The firemen were tossing wood on the fire as fast as they could go. An hour had gone by. They were barely halfway. And the fireman came up. He looked at the captain and said, "Captain, oh, we're not going to make it. We're running out of wood." The captain says, "We've got to get these donut holes to Cincinnati. You go and you find anything you can that'll burn." And that's what they did. They went out on the deck. They pushed everybody out of the chairs, and they took the chairs, and they smashed them up, and they threw them down to the fire. They went into the restaurant, and they took their axes, and they broke up the tables and chairs there. And they took those down to the fire. They went into the bedrooms, and they broke up the beds, and they smashed up the dressers, and they pulled the doors off the walls. And then they started taking apart the walls and the floors. Pretty soon they had burned the top 2 decks of the ship. That made the ship even lighter, which meant they could go even faster. Now that big paddle wheel was going, shh. You couldn't even see it. Now when something goes by you that fast, it's going to kick up wind. And when the Galusha blew past, it was like a cyclone or a hurricane. All the trees bent over backwards and the shingles blew off the roofs. And the turkeys and the horses and the cows and the ducks and the sheep, why, they bent their heads forward to the wind. And it blew them nice and flat. But the pigs, those beautiful feathered pigs, they was not very bright. They didn't want to get dust in their eyes, so they turned around like this. And the wind went, stripped every last one of them as naked as Thanksgiving turkeys. There was not a feather left on any pig in the whole Ohio River Valley. They made it to Cincinnati on time. The donut holes were delivered. They were not lost. But the feathered pigs were. From that day to this, there has never been another feathered pig. I'm sure you could go to the Ohio Historical Society and they'd give you all the details. Well, my friends, thank you very much for letting me come and talk to you for a while today. Thank you for helping me with these stories. We have all got stories, and they are worth telling. You should ask your parents and your grandparents to tell you about the stupid things they did when they were your age. Ask your grandparents to tell you about the stupid things your parents did. And if you are lucky enough to be with small people, tell them your stories. Because even if you don't think they're very interesting, they are. And my word, spend a lot of time at the library this summer. Read a lot of books, because that's where the best stories come from. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night. All right, we through singing now.